Well, DOGE and Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has been making headlines for its nonsense approach to exposing waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal agencies. While millions of Americans are cheering on the long overdue accountability, progressives are losing their minds, desperate to stop the revelations from coming out, from uncovering shady government grants to calling out bloated bureaucracies. DOGE is shaking up Washington in ways we've never seen before, and now there are reports of mass layoffs at USAID and growing calls to audit Fauci's former agency, the NIH. And joining us now to break it all down is Dr. Isaiah Hankle, a three-time best-selling author and the CEO of Overqualified.com. Isaiah, good to have you back. Thanks so much for being here. So Elon and DOGE continuing on their mission of holding the government agencies and their employees accountable. The vast majority of American people we see are thrilled, finally, to see some accountability. But the liberals are not happy. What are they scared about?
I don't know. When your argument is reduced to fighting for more IRS agents and being mad that we're cutting IRS agents, you're losing the argument. So I think the more that this happens, the more that we're going to see support of the current administration continue to climb, and I think we're going to see that people are going to eventually have to roll over on this and just accept the fact that everyone, the vast majority, want to see government people held accountable. And I think it's so shocking to a lot of these government employees because they haven't been held accountable for so long. They forgot that they are public servants. They think that we work for them when in fact they work for us. They're supported by our tax dollars. They don't really produce anything. They regulate a lot, but they certainly don't produce like the private sector does. So for them to be held accountable in the same way as the private sector, I think most Americans are like, finally, I can see where my tax dollars have been going. I'm not happy about it, and I want it to stop now. And all that they're screaming is more, more, more. That's what the Americans want to see: more cuts, faster, more layoffs.
Well, and the president, he himself came out and said, the only problem I have with Elon Musk is he's not doing enough.
Right. Exactly.
Go
Yeah.
harder.
I don't think this is slowing down. Yeah. I mean, look at the polling numbers that have come out, even from places like Harvard and the Harris poll. People want to see these cuts. If you look at any online platform, just about the, even left-leaning ones, people are excited about this, and they can try to spin it all they want. But again, if you're spinning it to the point of advocating for IRS people not to be cut off, and these individuals, sure, they are human beings, right? So there's a lot of screaming about empathy, but where was the empathy when people were getting fired for not taking the vaccine? Where was the empathy when people in the private sector for the last several years haven't been being hired at all because of the white collar recession, right? People are having a very hard time getting hired right now, but these government individuals have these cushy jobs where they don't even show up to work the majority of the time, and they're only being required now to go back to work. Oh, and by the way, many of these people who are getting cut get like 8 months of severance, which nobody in the private market gets. So it's going to be hard to find that empathy among the American people for these government layoffs.
Let me tell you something. I worked in mainstream media during COVID, and then they sent us home. They made us work from home, and then they made me go back to work, and they're like, come back to work. But I didn't have childcare because all of the schools were closed. And my bosses said, not our problem. The mainstream media said, not our problem, because they wanted me back at work. And it's like, well, we're in a lockdown. I've been put in a situation where my state has closed my childcare.
Exactly right. And I think that the government's been fueled by virtue signaling for so long over logic and reason that they don't understand the fact that you have to produce something if you're employed. Where do their salaries come from? What are their metrics of success? Just hiring a bunch of people that are labeled as project managers or program managers to push things around and to have meetings and committees, right? What's coming of this? And then again, if you see the line items coming out of all of the fraud, the abuse, things going towards stuff that nobody wants. They can't find, right, a sizable group of Americans to say, you know what, I want, right, us to fund Sesame Street in other countries, whatever it might be. There's an endless stream of this. So I think the more the progressives fight it, the more they put a spotlight on it, right, whether it's called the Streisand effect or whatever, and the more that Americans are going to pay attention to it and want and demand more of it.
Yeah, there are reports that USAID will dismiss 2,000 employees after, they'd already frozen hundreds of millions of dollars in grants. What's your opinion on all of this? And don't you think it's a good thing that we're trimming the size of our federal government workforce? And you kind of just touched on this. The left is tugging on the heartstrings, saying, these are mothers, these are fathers. I'm seeing articles all over the place. That's where they're going with it. It's like, don't fire these people because they have families. Of course, yes, everybody needs to live, but it's got to make sense.
Yeah, and I think the Americans are being like, well, what about me? I got a family.
Right.
Everything's more expensive now. I got to pay more at the grocery store. And why is that? Oh, it's not just because we printed more money, it's because of where that money is going. So they're connecting the dots. And that's why DOGE and this administration is winning, because the Americans, they can see everything's more painful now. I don't have as much money. A consumer report just came out saying consumer confidence is down. That's because all of this money has been going not to Americans, not reinvesting in us, but it's been going overseas to these initiatives that bureaucrats just decided were important, but the American taxpayers never decided they're important. So those people that were making those decisions, they're being cut. Most of the jobs over the past 4 years went to the government, not the private sector. That's what nobody's talking about. So they bloated this. The talking point should be, oh, almost all hiring over the past 4 years was in the government. This is a much needed correction so that we can actually put people back into the private sector job market, which is the sector that produces these tax dollars in the first place.
That's too much logic. You're expecting the media, the mainstream media to talk about things that make sense. What do you make of, there's talk about possibly, infusing money into our economy and giving the taxpayer money, minimum maybe like $5,000 a taxpayer. You've heard that, right? That being thrown around somewhere.
Dividends, exactly right, from DOGE. I like this idea because it's not just pure money printing. We're actually taking money, like if you think of a balance sheet that any company would have to go through, we're stopping all of these wasted expenditures that don't bring anything back, that don't produce anything, and we're investing them elsewhere, now in the American people, right? And these American people will produce and they will spend and they'll use it in the economy. And so I really like this idea. I think with the combination of tariffs and making other companies outside of the U.S. pay, the external revenue service, maybe we'll get rid of the IRS altogether and replace it. There's been talk of that.
Yes.
These are the kind of things, and really the only things that can save the white-collar job market, things that we've been seeing as a result of the mismanagement of the past 4 years.
Yeah, infuse money right away into the economy, make it tangible for people to have that money to pay off their debt. The credit card debt is through the roof right now. I think a lot of Americans, when they get that money, that's unfortunately where it's going to go. In a recent op-ed in the Daily Caller, you called for Elon and DOGE to audit Fauci's old agency, the NIH, and said this will have ripple effects into the higher academia. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, I've been funded by the NIH as far as my work working in a lab when I was getting my PhD. And so I can tell you on the inside, there is a lot of abuse and fraud in these organizations, funding projects that make no sense, that no taxpayer, again, no sizable group of taxpayers would say, hey, I want to fund this research. Something came out recently that there was large research projects just on which words are the most racist, things like this that nobody asks for. And there's no accountability. I remember when Obama was president, there was on air, a lot of people were going to these town halls. They were very upset that they were losing their doctors because of Obamacare. There needs to be something like that for the NIH and for every professor, every principal investigator, every researcher. They need to have to stand in front of the American people and explain their research. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So what you get is funding bioweapons, funding Wuhan, things that just came out from Ecolab showing that the NIH is funding things that Americans don't want, that can put Americans and have put Americans at risk. So it's my view that the NIH needs to be gutted, if not dismantled entirely. And this is something that I strongly believe the private sector can handle much better, again, than the public sector, which takes the private sector taxpayer funds, thinks that they know what is best to do with it, and then makes decisions that no Americans want.
I have a feeling that DOGE and Elon Musk might do this.
I do too. And they've already been trying to do it. The courts are slowing it down. Yeah. But the problem is that the NIH, there's so much funding there that can be cut that they're going to go in for sure.
Yeah. Dr. Isaiah Hankle, as always, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.